They laughed at him. They spat on him. To them, he was nothing more than a worthless, homeless man. But they had no idea that one day their lives would rest in his hands. And when that moment came, the man they mocked became the hero they never expected. His name was Daniel. Years ago, he had a home, a family, and a steady job. But life is unpredictable. A devastating accident, followed by medical bills, stripped him of everything. His wife left, his home was repossessed, and before he knew it, Daniel found himself sleeping under a bridge, clutching a thin blanket against the biting cold. Day after day, he begged for food, but most people avoided his eyes. To them, he wasn't a person anymore. He was just another shadow on the streets. Yet Daniel never lost his humanity. Even when he had only one piece of bread, he would break it in half and feed a stray dog that had started following him. To that little dog, Daniel wasn't a homeless man. He was a friend. But the rest of the world wasn't so kind. Every morning, Daniel sat on the same street corner, quietly holding out a cup, hoping for spare change. But instead of kindness, he often got cruelty. Teenagers passing by threw coins at him, not into his cup, but at his face. Others took videos, mocking him for social media. One afternoon, a group of wealthy office workers walked past. One of them, James, sneered loudly enough for Daniel to hear. "If you weren't so lazy, you wouldn't be begging out here." His friends laughed, tossing a crumpled bill onto the ground as if Daniel were a dog. Daniel said nothing. He simply lowered his eyes, swallowing the humiliation. The little stray dog barked at the men, as if defending him. But Daniel just whispered, "It's okay. One day, life will show them the truth." What Daniel didn't know was that this day was closer than he thought. It was a chilly evening. The offices had closed, and the streets were quiet. Daniel sat on his corner, sharing his bread with the dog, when suddenly a loud boom echoed through the street. Smoke began rising from the tall office building nearby. Shouts filled the air as alarms blared. A fire had broken out on the third floor, quickly spreading upward. Workers were trapped inside. The same workers who had mocked Daniel hours before were now screaming for help at the windows. People gathered, pulling out their phones to record, but no one stepped forward to help. The fire raged, growing hotter, louder, angrier. Daniel stood frozen. Memories of his old life rushed back, the family he lost, the home that burned away in the fire of debt and despair. He clenched his fists, heart pounding. He could have walked away. He could have said, "They deserve it." But instead, Daniel ran straight toward the flames. The crowd gasped as the homeless man they had mocked disappeared into the burning building. Inside, smoke stung his lungs. The heat was unbearable. But Daniel pressed forward, climbing the stairwell 2 steps at a time. On the 3rd floor, he found them, the office workers, huddled together, terrified. James, the man who had insulted him, stared in disbelief. "You? What are you doing here?" Daniel coughed, but shouted, "If you want to live, follow me." Panic erupted, but Daniel kept calm. He tied a wet rag around his face, broke open a fire extinguisher, and guided the group through the smoke. The stray dog, barking outside, seemed to cheer him on, its voice echoing through the chaos. Step by step, Daniel led them down the stairwell. At one point, a beam collapsed, blocking the way. Without hesitation, Daniel shoved it aside, burning his arms in the process. Finally, with lungs burning and legs trembling, he kicked open the emergency exit. Fresh air flooded in, and the group stumbled outside, coughing but alive. The crowd cheered. Phones recorded every second. But Daniel collapsed onto the pavement, exhausted, smoke-stained, barely conscious. Paramedics rushed forward, placing an oxygen mask over Daniel's face. The office workers surrounded him, speechless. James knelt down, tears in his eyes. "You saved us? After everything we said to you, why?" Daniel's voice was weak but steady. "Because kindness is free. And cruelty? Cruelty always has a price." In that moment, silence fell over the crowd. The video spread online within hours. The world that once ignored Daniel now saw him for what he truly was, not a beggar, not a failure, but a hero. Days later, Daniel lay in a hospital bed, bandages covering his arms. For the first time in years, he had visitors. The very people who had mocked him now stood at his side, ashamed. James spoke first. "We were wrong. We judged you without knowing your story. Please forgive us." Daniel smiled faintly. It's not forgiveness you need. It's change, and they did change. James organized a fundraiser, raising enough money to get Daniel off the streets. A small apartment, new clothes, and a job were offered to him. But Daniel's greatest treasure wasn't the roof over his head. It was the little stray dog, still by his side, wagging its tail. Together they had walked through fire and survived. Daniel's story is a reminder. Never measure a person's worth by what they own. The man you laugh at today could be the one who saves your life tomorrow, because in the end, true strength isn't found in wealth or status. It's found in kindness, courage, and humanity. And sometimes, the ones we see as the weakest are the strongest of all.